Hi, this is Bill Horne. This segment is an interview with Maurice White, who is running for supervisor of Ward 2. It is exciting to hear from a candidate who is a citizen running for a job that he wants to do, rather than a politician running for the next office in a climb of the political ladder. Watch this interview and decide for yourself. Hello, welcome to this segment. Today I am here with Maurice White, who is running for supervisor of Ward 2. I'm going to be asking Maurice some questions, and the first question is, who is Maurice White?
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate this opportunity. Maurice White is a homegrown fella. I was born here in Carson City. I graduated from high school out of Douglas County, and then I went down to Phoenix, Arizona for trade school. I got out of trade school, came right back here to Carson City. I spent my life, my career as a diesel mechanic. I've worked in both the private sector as well as the public sector. I've worked in the agrarian, the construction, and the on and off-road transportation fields. I've worked for a wide variety of employers outside of that career. I've been maintenance crew on a golf course on a very large estate down in the Carson Valley. I've worked, of course, in the casinos and restaurant situations, as anybody who grew up here in Carson City would. I have been involved in the entry-level through management level jobs in many of the places that I've worked.
Thank you. Something that I want to ask, I believe in the Constitution, so I'm asking a question that I have a personal interest in. How do you feel about the Constitution?
So the Constitution, I believe, is one of the greatest documents ever written by mankind. It is my guiding light that I will use throughout my term as a supervisor. I will, with each and every agenda item that comes forward, test that item against what I believe are the theories and philosophies of our founders. That's a pretty appropriate question for today, because today happens to be Constitution Day. On this day in 1887, the Constitutional Convention approved what we have today as the Constitution. Again, I think that is one of the monumental events in mankind's history.
I agree, for sure. I think it's the epitome of political science. You're basically coming in to an empty seat, and you're basically coming in as a citizen trying to come for the first time into the political environment. Why do you wish to be a supervisor?
Well, this kind of all really started about 10 years ago. I started following our Carson City Board of Supervisors because I felt like I didn't see the logic in what they were doing. I believe at this point that what I bring to the Board of Supervisors is a balanced viewpoint. Currently on the board, everybody there is from the administrative side of the house, and generally with a pretty narrow expertise. My wide range of jobs that I have held, from entry level to management level, gives me a point of view that the Board of Supervisors doesn't currently have. Now, their administrative approach is absolutely important, but they don't have the experience and the viewpoint that I have. I think they approve some contracts that they don't have a full understanding of what staff is bringing forward. A good example is 2 weeks ago at their meeting, they approved a contract not to get too deep into the weeds, but I believe portions of that contract were left pretty wide open, leaving them susceptible to change orders and a substantial increase in the cost to that contract. And I simply know the questions to ask in that regard.
Okay, so you're not satisfied with some of the procedures, and you're not satisfied that they have a wide range of experience like you do, that they've been managers and not out in the field, so to speak. And
well, I think I bring an aptitude that will make the board more diverse.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, those qualifications, I can see that those would be very important. What other strengths do you bring to the table?
I think my ability to work with other folks is really important. Again, through my career, working with construction people, working with farmers and ranchers, working at transportation arrangements, being involved with upper level and lower level management arenas really helps me a lot. Secondarily, I spent a good portion of my life dabbling in the nonprofit and benevolent worlds. That has brought me into contact with a good number of people from various walks of lives, where we have to sit down and work together to figure out how to accomplish this common goal. I think that will work well, because I can sit in a room and have a conversation with anybody. And that's what you have to do to collaborate and bring a project forward.
You don't mind if I say I'm a little bit prejudiced in this interview, because I supported you in your attempt 4 years ago.
Yes, you did.
And so I'm going to mention two things that I think you bring to the table that you have forgotten to mention. And I think it's very important. The first is honesty. That is, doing what you say you're going to do, and being accountable for what you say you're going to do. And the second thing, I think, is approachability, because you're a citizen, you're like all the rest of us, you're not a career politician, you're coming in to do something that you believe in, and I want to say that I think that is very important.
Thank you. I appreciate those kind words.
Just kind of briefly, are there certain corrections and policies that you would be looking to maybe implement or push for if you win this election?
So there are a number of things that I want to really work on, and one of those is what they call the asset management program. That program will put together the ability to understand and prioritize the maintenance needs of the city's assets, all of the underground infrastructure, their buildings, their vehicles, all of that sort of thing. We're right at the ending stage of doing the assessment work. Just today, the Board of Supervisors voted to purchase a software program that will be used to prioritize those maintenance needs, and then it's a matter of funding. And funding, honestly, is going to be the hard part. It always is. It's a situation where, especially now with the governor's $1.2 billion black hole deficit, I'm concerned that the various cities and counties are going to suffer unfunded mandate pushdowns, and that could very well throw a kink into the city's budget as it is built today. So I think we need to find places to cut spending, because I'm really not interested in raising taxes. That's the only way a government can raise revenue is to increase taxes. So I want to look for places to at savings as well as making cuts, and it's very difficult because the budget is built into silos that cannot cross-pollinate. So they don't ordinarily have these large buckets of money that you can just walk in and say, take 20% out of that and everything's fine. So we need to look at consolidating costs and services with our neighbors as well as the school district. I think we need to look at why the state of Nevada does not pay property taxes to Carson City. They own a lot of acreage here in Carson City, and they pay nothing like a regular property owner does. And yet Carson City supplies all the services and roads that they take advantage of. We also have a situation with the federal government. It's called payment in lieu of taxes. Now, I'm not sure how that formula works, but it's based on the amount of property that they hold within your jurisdiction. I understand that Carson City is very small geographically compared to our neighbors, but our neighbors are getting payments in the area of millions. I don't think $120,000 that Carson City gets is appropriate. We need to figure out a way to get an exemption, rework the formula, do something so that these federal agencies that are here in Carson City are paying their fair share, just like the citizens do. That's kind of on a policy level the things that I want to look at. I don't find anything really sideways, just some modifications just to step back and have a look how we can readjust and make things go further.
Okay. Well, I'm understanding that you're believing that Carson City is doing pretty well for the most part in how it's being managed.
They really do a good job with the interim finance committee, the finance department. Our mayor-elect, Lori Bagwell, that's her expertise is budget building and budget management. And today, when they brought supplemental requests to the Board of Supervisors, she really worked them over. She was fair, but she made them get down and justify why they wanted those things. And they didn't get everything they were asking for, but it was a lot. I thought maybe we should hold off on that a little while longer until we see what the legislature is going to do with the governor's budget. We're really not that far out until that whole process with the legislature takes up again, and we've held it off now for 6 months. I just thought a few more months was appropriate, but I don't have any argument with the actions they took today.
Okay. Well, I have, as a citizen, I have a question, and I'm not going to try and blindside you, but I feel that it's something that I would like your opinion on. And I will give my opinion, and you can disagree or not.
If we can't disagree and have a conversation and still be friendly, there's a problem.
Yes, there is.
Let's have it.
Okay. I don't approve of some of the governor's actions in his mandates, and I believe that the deficit of 1.27 million that he talks about billion, I'm sorry, not million, billion that he's talking about is in large part a result of actions that were not well thought out. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't be careful with pandemics, but those actions that have caused the deficit are the result of shutting down businesses, which I don't agree with. And my belief is that the damages caused by actions that are either illegal or unconstitutional are the governors and not the taxpayers.
Right.
And so when you talk about the governor coming to Carson City and taking money which will increase our taxes. It's just a roundabout way of increasing taxes for what he's responsible for, and I find that very disgusting personally.
I have a little issue with the illogical approach that has been taken. It doesn't make any sense to me that one group of people can have these gatherings, but you can't go to church. And frankly, I don't know where he comes up with that $1.2 billion deficit, because the overall contribution that gaming makes is $1.2 billion. So gaming was shut down, their bars were shut down, but gaming didn't stop paying their property taxes. Mm-hmm. Gaming didn't stop paying their retail sales taxes. They didn't stop paying their room taxes. So I'm not certain where the $1.2 billion deficit comes from when I look at the sales tax receipts for the state. Carson City, of course, is of great interest to me. They finished the 2020 budget, I believe it was 4.9% above their projected budget. The only county in the state that took a big hit was Churchill County. Everybody else came out either above or only slightly affected by a few percent. So I'm not sure where he's getting this whole business that there's a 1.2 billion shortfall. I don't know where it is.
Okay, well, I hope he's wrong about that. Are there any new programs that you would think about? Are you thinking about, if you come in and you're elected, would you see anything that you would add to what the current programs are in Carson City?
I would make some additions and perhaps the word is improvements to a couple of programs. Those are programs that deal with mental health issues here in Carson City. The first one would be what's known as MOST. That is the Mobile Outreach Safety Team. That is comprised of a specially trained deputy and a licensed clinician. What they do is when they come in contact with a person, they can make the determination that this is a low-level situation that does not include violence, and the person is in a current mental health crisis. They can take that person to go get mental health help and get them over their crisis rather than taking them to jail. Secondly, within the jail, there is the FAST system. That's the Forensic Assessment Service Triage Team. That's comprised of a doctor and a licensed clinician. They have the ability within the jail there to do a more in-depth assessment, get these folks connected to longer-term solutions, get their heads out of the cloud, get their feet back on the ground, hopefully get them reconnected with their families and their careers. Because, you know, this wash, rinse, recycle deal, it just doesn't work. And, you know, we can all have a whole idea of what we think of the homeless and the mental health issues and that sort of thing. Domestic disturbance situations. But the bottom line is they're here. We need to deal with it. Just saying to put them on a bus and ship them to another community or just ignoring it isn't getting the job done. Subsequently, in just the last few days, I've become aware of another situation that I think needs to be rolled into the MOST and FAST, and that is rescuing people out of the human trafficking industry. I had a conversation with a gal that is a survivor, and she is doing that work now. I've never heard the Sheriff's Department talk about the human trafficking side of the issues in our streets, but I think I'm going to have a conversation with the sheriff about how we can roll an element of the human trafficking into this situation. From the sheriff's side, we'll go over to the fire department. The fire department is likewise heavily impacted with these mental health crises in town, in that often these folks will call 911 for an ambulance when they really don't need an ambulance. These ambulance rides end up not being paid for. It's a pretty high cost. It's north of $500,000 a year that ambulance rides are not paid for here in Carson City. They do have a program that they can use a physician assistant with a van to intervene and stop, at least cut down on these ambulance rides, and not take the people to the emergency room, because that drives the cost up. So I think we need to increase that effort as well. These are pretty expensive endeavors. You know, they require a vehicle, they require people with educations that draw pretty good sized wages. I will say that the licensed clinician over on the MOST team is actually a state employee. She's on loan through a grant to Carson City. I'm advocating again to increase those programs. Also over at the fire department, they have not had a substantial increase in personnel for quite a long time. Over the last few years, their calls have increased by over 50%. What that's doing is pushing them into the outer limits of how they can use their overtime. What that does is it puts tired people out there in stressful situations, and when you do that, sometimes they don't make good decisions. So we need to increase the staff at the fire departments. Additionally, with the growth here in town, they are no longer, in many cases, meeting their expected 4-minute arrival time. So in about the next 3 years, we're going to have to build a fire station, which means equipment and personnel again. The fire station is about $10.3 million. We need to figure out a way to do that. That goes back to consolidating services and contracts and that sort of thing with our neighbors, figuring out ways to get our other government entities to kick in a little more than they are.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We touched on the fact that the revenue for Carson City has been steady or just slightly increasing. Would you would be interested in budgeting that a little bit better, so that if we get a decrease in revenue sometime during this as a result of what's been going on?
Yeah, I would be advocating for putting more money into some of the budget categories that cannot be drafted out, taken away to somewhere else. Mm-hmm. All of the projections right now show that Carson City revenue is going to be pretty steady. Again, my concern is unfunded mandates from the governor. That's why I want to leave spending a little more constricted than we would ordinarily be doing, at least long enough to see what the governor's budget, how it might impact Carson City. Again, I am in full support of the capital improvement programs and For the most part, even the supplementary requests that came in today at the Board of Supervisors meeting, I just hope that the governor doesn't run over us, is where my real concern is.
Okay, there are going to be likely, I believe, we're going to have hard times, because you can't shut down businesses for prolonged times and not have casualties. So what would you be looking at Carson City as being able to do to help those entities in need? We're going to lose businesses, and we may have to. It's hard to start up a business, and there are a lot of problems. Is there anything as a supervisor you can do to help that situation? Because
so you're absolutely right. There has been COVID casualties, as I refer to them, and there's going to be more. I think the Board of Supervisors can do a wide range of things are available to them through administrative operations. I think the primary thing that has to happen is the Board of Supervisors needs to reach out to the business community. But the business community has to react and reach back. And it can't be just the same old people that they talk to every day. What I'm looking at is perhaps can the Board of Supervisors find a way to defer some of the upfront costs that businesses have just to get open? Can we defer that for a period of time until there is a revenue stream for that business, so that then they can, pay up on the business license that they didn't have to pay for coming in? Do building code upgrades after there's a revenue stream instead of on the front end. Those kind of things. I know today they talked about businesses that are using storage containers, primarily restaurants, to put their furniture and office equipment in that they've had to get rid of because of the 50% occupancy requirement. Mm-hmm. But they don't want to sell it or throw it away because eventually they're going to need it back. Mm-hmm. So they have allowed them to have an extended period of these storage containers on site. Mm-hmm. I think that's the kind of thing that comes out of the businesses reaching back out to the Board of Supervisors. We need to keep that line of communication open and entertain, I don't want to say every suggestion because something might be just completely undoable, but we need to listen and collaborate with these businesses to make sure that they can stay in business and get into business coming out of this thing.
So with that, I'm guessing that if you're elected, that they will be able to contact you to at least talk to you about things.
Absolutely. My phone number is all over everywhere, 775-297-6484. Call me if you have a question, a concern, a comment. Please don't call me at 2 in the morning, but I'll answer if I'm available, and leave me a message if I don't answer. I'll get back to you.
Great. Do you have any other remarks to prospective voters on why you should be elected to Supervisor Ward 2?
Unfortunately, this is a very expensive endeavor. I could use your help in manpower. I could use your financial assistance if you see it in your heart to do that. If you visit my website, mauriceforward2.com, there's a lot more information on there, how I think, what I perceive as how the city can move forward. While you're on that website, again, feel free to use that PayPal button. It will help me out, and then I can help you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming to this segment, and vote for Maurice.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate the opportunity, and I hope you folks out there listening will contact me with your ideas, your questions, comments, concerns, whatever it may be.
Okay.
Thanks, Bill.